Welcome everyone to our next episode of Big Data Talks, in which we have conversations with industry experts in which the way data, machine learning, and artificial intelligence are changing the way we live. My name is Jan-Willem and I will be your host again today. I'm the author of the Enterprise Big Data Framework, which is hosting this series of Big Data Talks. You can always watch back the recording of this discussion on YouTube, the Big Data Framework website, and the podcasting platforms on Spotify and Apple. Today, I have the extreme pleasure to welcome Angelika Klidas. Angelika is a seasoned expert navigating the realms of data and analytics. With a rich background as a former operations manager for diverse organizations, Angelika has earned acclaims for her strategic thinking and problem-solving processes. Currently donning the hat of challenger and advisor, she's revered as a data literacy evangelist. Through her roles as an operations manager and strategic advisor, Angelika skillfully dissects business intelligence landscapes, aligns with organizational ambitions, and provides invaluable advice to propel data maturity. But Angelika's influence extends beyond corporate landscapes. She's a lecturer at the Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences, which is personally very interesting because that's where I came from. And she is empowering her data and analytics students with practical skills and strategic insights. Angelika holds a bachelor's degree in business information technology from Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences, adding depth to her academic qualifications. In her multifaceted roles, she also co-authored a book titled Data Literacy in Practice, a complete guide to data literacy and making smarter decisions with data through intelligent actions. And that's obviously one of the many reasons I wanted to talk to her today. Angelika, it's a real pleasure to welcome you here today on the Big Data Talks episode and podcast. Absolute pleasure to meet you and have you here today.
Thank you.
Good. As a first kickoff question, it's a question I typically ask all of my guests: is where did your fascination from data come from, and how did you started to dive into this domain?
Well, thank you, Jan-Willem. It's a great pleasure to meet you as well. Thank you for this opportunity to be with you on this podcast. To answer your question, where my fascination comes from, I think it started already a long time ago. When I was working at the big company called UWV, I had to work with static lists, say around 1990, 91, 92. And I needed to print them out every day and to steer my team to reach their goals and the targets. And with those lists, I had to find out what people needed to deliver, but also ask the question, when would they be delivering the elements? And I think that's this area where my fascination came from insights. Even I recorded my own dives. I'm a scuba diver. I made over 5,000 dives. I had my own database and I was doing some things with it. But I was always asking myself the question, how can we get into speed? And how can we get to the heart of decision making where it needs to be? And how can we make it better, quicker, easier? And when I started studying at the Hogeschool of Amsterdam, the Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences, I found a tool that we worked with, that they worked with at school. It's called ClickView. And from there, I thought, wow, what is happening? It was totally different than Cognos that I was working at that time, or Business Objects. And ClickView just opened my heart, and I found the ability to get speed into my projects. And from there, it grew beyond my imagination. And augmented reality, we did prescribing maintenance, working on a famous drink that we have in the Netherlands called iced tea. And we helped a big company delivering a total new customer interaction by combining image recognition and collecting data, so people could scan a bottle and then do something with it. And we could even plot augmented reality on it, or customers could fill in a form to win something. And even healthcare, we did amazing things. And now at the Business Data Challenges, where I work as a challenger advisor, we have super cool techniques called with the denoising, which actually helps to improve medical MRI images. and we have this super cool solution called post estimation that helps runners to improve their running skills, to provide them more efficiency, but also help them to not to have injuries during their runs, right?
Wow,
So
that's
yeah,
very impressive.
it's a lot of things, and I'm not really a tech savvy person. I know technique, I know how to build a dashboard, but I'm no real software engineer or data engineer. But I know all the concepts because that's what I studied and that's what I love to talk about.
Yeah, very interesting. So it's quite a familiar trend that I've been detecting throughout all my episodes is that people who use data in their professional life, they use it into their private lives as well. And you mentioned something very interesting, which I would like to ask you one more question around. You mentioned that you've done 6,000 dives and that you 5,000 dives in school. So do you keep track of that into in a dashboard or database somewhere on all your personal?
It's just a small database that I created, and we started out, I think, in 90. I started diving, I think, around 90, 80 in the old-fashioned way, with I don't know a horseshoe under around my neck and going up from 20 meters without my breathing apparatus. I started to get my diplomas, but I registered them all in Excel, and actually I did nothing with it. It still remains on some disk somewhere in my books shelf. And now, because of my health.
Yeah, it's very interesting because you start to see. So there's a lot of people who dive and they don't keep track of anything. And it's funny. I was talking to a professional runner who also is very much involved in the data domain. Also, one of the treats is to kind of keep track of everything and start encoding that data. And so then there comes this moment, and this is obviously one of the main reasons I was super interested to talk to you today, is that you think, well, I'm going to write a book. And the book that you wrote is Data Literacy in Practice. Yeah. So I'd love to learn a little bit around, what made you think, I need to share this with the world? If you can give me a brief summary of what's in it, that's obviously something that I would be very interested to learn. And what kind of challenges it does address?
Well, what inspired me is that I always wanted to write a book. I even started actually on a Dutch book, but then my colleague was checking my chapters. I had written, I think, about 5 or 6 chapters, and my self-confidence was a little bit low because I have some kind of dyslexia. In Dutch, and
I know what it is,
and some people found it so good to break down my self-confidence when I had to deliver a chapter to some kind of professor, and because I wanted to work for a university somewhere in the Netherlands, and he broke down totally my book, and totally did the chapter, and that's what made me feel a bit, afraid to write something. And then Pact came to me at the beginning of 2022, and they asked me to write a book with someone like Kevin Henneken. He's one of my best friends, and they told me, "You are not alone in this process. We will help you. We will guide you. Do you think that Steven Spielberg has written his book in one time? He had 5, 6 reviews. And maybe still even there are some little flaws in it." And with the good help of some friends, Mireille Erasmus and Lindsay Langehoven, they are both from South Africa. They are friends of mine. And they helped me, and I've gained my self-confidence back and wrote the book with Kevin. And it's about how we start working with data through our phones, but also how you can combine it. Organizational data literacy, it's about data management, it's about visualizations, it's about goals, organizational goals that we think is important, critical thinking, how to set up assessments that can help you to discover your data persona and all those kind of things. And we deliver templates, everything is in it, and we just want to share our knowledge. So amazing journey.
Very, very interesting. I teach a lot of data literacy courses myself, so I would be very, very interested to read it and learn a little bit around what kind of techniques you've been using over the years.
Yeah.
So in your introduction, you mentioned that your current role is a challenger. It's actually a title I kind of personally very much like. And I also noticed that you're involved in challenging teams to do better. I'm quite sure you use data literacy in that as well. If we look at the world that we live in today, 2024, with all the, I would say, challenges that we see across the world, but also across the way that people use or misuse data, what are the key things that you think we need to address? And what is it that you teach your students in that regard?
As a challenger and as a student, as a teacher for my students, I teach them actually the whole aspect of forming your mission, your vision, your strategy, how you want to reach your goals, but also how important it is to address it as a change, because every implementation, how small the element is a change for a team, a person, a company, and you need to guide and help them to actually understand what they are looking at. And I love to help my students and our customers that we serve through the business data challenges as a challenger, to help them to ask the right questions. I recently did a course. I gave a course to people from several organizations, and it's about the questions that you have to ask. Never ask closed questions, but just ask the why, what, how, when, and whatever to get the right answer. Identify which personas are there. What is their level of being, the ability to read visualizations, and help them to think critically. Critical thinking, I think, is one of the key aspects in 2024 and beyond when it comes to working with data. If we talk about business intelligence, future predictions, prescriptive, but also the Gen AI, the AI elements, we need to be critical in the things that we see.
Yeah, I think you're mentioning something very relevant, and especially the critical thinking, in my opinion, is also going to be this massive challenge in the next few years, because it's becoming more and more difficult to distinguish real from fake. And there's a whole debate in the world about misinformation in the last few years. So when we talk about that and about how we can use data in a, I'd like to refer to it as a responsible or in a sustainable way. What would be the key areas that you would need to address to achieve that critical thinking that you just mentioned?
Well, I think it's very important to ask questions to the things that you see, to do your research in finding out where does it come from, how is it used, where does it come from, how can I interpret it, can I find some other sources around the topic. There are so many things in which we can be misled with things that we see at this moment. Fake images, fake recordings, fake news, hallucinating large language models, and all those kind of things. And I really did some tests between some large language models, and I get different answers. And then I start thinking, okay, what? And then I'll just do my research, and try to find books, because I still read the normal books. I love books. And not only books on internet or articles on internet, because it can be disturbingly bad.
Still the physical hard copy traditional kind, right? It's very good. So
we need to help people to understand that they need to criticize the things that they see.
Speaking about understanding, when I did my research for this interview, and as you just mentioned, it's always good to be informed, I came upon a very, very interesting article, and that explained 5 of Mr. Miyagi's Karate Kid lessons to help understand the importance of learning and the data literacy journey. Now, for the people who are listening and are very young, if you don't know who Mr. Miyagi is or Karate Kid, it's mandatory homework this weekend to go and watch the movie. But I would love to get your take on this. How you come up with that very, very interesting comparison.
Well, it's not only my credit, right? First of all, I would like to compliment my dear friend Buddy Harmser. You know, he was my former employer, and he wrote, actually he's technically so gifted, and he wrote an article from a technical perspective with the wax on, wax off elements, and from there I just switched it. I told him I'm going to switch it into data literacy because we can do the same with analogies when it comes to data literacy. So I like to compliment Buddy, but yeah, the data literacy elements are so cool. His wisdom, like the wax on, wax off, it's the core of it all, because practice does make perfect, right? So you need to be able to develop your skills, to practice working with insights, read books, read articles from data viz heroes like Brent Dykes and like Alberto Cairo, find articles on the web. That's the wax on, wax off element, his phrase. And the other one, first learn to stand, then learn fly. Nature will done your son, not mine. And here it's become, it's starting simple. Starting simple, work from there. Practice your simple visualizations first, move on to the more complex, and then you will create, and then you will have the fact that you will be standing first, and then the ability to fly with cool visualizations. The other one is about the chopsticks. So a man who catches fly with a chopstick and accomplish anything. It's more about the ability and willingness to do something new, right? And
I think that that's one of the main parts that it's all about, right? The ability to want to learn something new. Isn't it also what data literacy is a bit about?
It is, because it's not a one-time story. It's not a one-time off project. It's something that needs to continue to evolve, because we have to continuously learn, because the world is changing.
Absolutely. So you just mentioned Brent, who I also interviewed on this same podcast of last year. And I've spoken to quite a number of people within the data literacy domain, or voices that are recognized within data literacy. And one of the topics that recently came up was, well, in order to get started with data literacy, you first need to establish a culture. And by lack of a different word, we just refer to it as a data culture. And this is also something that I kind of got out of your article, and the way that you help promote and enhance data literacy through data culture. So I'd like to pick your brain a little bit around that in terms of, what do you think establishes a data culture? And suppose that I'm listening to this podcast right now and I have absolutely no idea where to start. What would be a first good starting stone for any organization, large or small, to say I would like to kind of move or transition to a data culture?
Well, what you see happening in the world is that I approach data literacy from 4 different pillars, right? That's also written down in the book. It's about the organizational data literacy. It's about data management. It's about data and analytics, and about education. Those 4 elements are for me the concept around data literacy and about the data culture. And sometimes you see, we just buy a tool and we just do something cool, and then it starts to get big, and then, oops, we need data management. Oh, we need also to think about organizational data literacy. Oh, by the way, we need also to educate our people. So sometimes it's crisscross. And I think we need to foster data literacy in the most broadest way, and that's the first pillar, organizational data literacy. We need to put it in our plans. It's not an activity we need to bring once. We need to keep on learning, introduce and mentor our employees to continuously learn. We have to provide that. And I believe when you start your journey in data literacy, get the hang of it, people just get enthusiastic. And with the the elements of the emotional intelligence section and the IQ, the hard technical skills, the soft skills and the hard skills, they need to be combined with each other to get that good culture.
And then if you say get the organization involved and make people enthusiastic, if I dissect that and go one level deeper, do you say start with training courses, or is it more of putting forward a case study?
It's
What
about
have you seen are
inspiration.
the things that work?
It's about inspiration. I used to be the nutcase, the data nutcase at the big organization in the Netherlands. I was running around with my laptop. I was showing off all these beautiful things that we could build based on small data sets and how we could help them, the departments within UWV. And it's quite a big organization, as you know. And I just was the nutcase that was running around, and but also the ambassador of spreading the word. And I truly believe that by then I was already teaching data literacy. It just didn't have the name at that moment. It was performance management. It was corporate performance management. It was maybe even business intelligence at the end, because that was also a buzzword that came up. And now it's called data literacy in the things that I do already for 16 years. So
yeah, it's just
cool.
a new brand name for something that might already be a little bit older. But I kind of like the words or the term data literacy. Kind of I think a lot of people immediately know what you mean with that.
Yeah, I think so too. So that's why I use it.
Yeah. So I'd like to switch for a second to your kind of academic side, if I can call it that, and look at the role of universities, because obviously universities educate the next generation, well, let me put it very bluntly. When I was in university, I would say data literacy was very low. Needed to use all kinds of applications, but to critically look at the validity of data sets, the way information was used, it was definitely not a part of my curriculum, to be fair. So what is the role that universities need to play, and how do you see that landscape changing as being actively involved with the UVA?
Yeah. Well, I'm truly happy that we have the opportunity at Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences that we can continuously evolve our curriculum, right? And we started already 16 years with this with this business intelligence course. And now it's called data and analytics, the minor data and analytics. And I have been teaching already for 16 years. And the beautiful thing is that we saw our profession evolving, but also the curriculum of the minor was evolving. So
if I can summarize, sorry for interrupting, but if I can summarize, what's the biggest change that you've seen in those 16 years?
The biggest change, I think, is what happened last year, or I think in November 2022, with the rise of the large language models. I think that's the biggest change that I think happened. Good, bad. I'm not sure yet to give a firm opinion in how I think ChatGPT or Bard or Gemini, I think is the new name now, is working. But I use it to be honest daily to shape my thoughts, or to ask something about a statement that I have written for a dashboard, an expression, to help me explain it or debug something. But to be honest, I'm not sure. I'm not sure yet if I think it's a good development or a bad development, because it's also hallucinating.
And can you explain those two sides? So what I think I'm obviously quite familiar with the positive side is in terms of efficiency, but look forward to hearing your take on what is the other side of this new technology.
Yeah, the other side is that I am a little bit scared. What will happen when people are not using their critical thinking skills? Because here again, first of all, it's data, what we extract and what we do things with. Secondly, we get a result and we need to criticize what we see. We need to ask questions. And I see that is not happening. People just say, write me an article or write me a post about this article. Oh, nice, cool. We put it on the internet or we put it on social media. Well, we need to sit back, look at it, read it, ask questions, tune it, find resources, find if we don't have plagiarism.
Yeah.
Because that's also a big issue. Right.
So because I read a survey a few months back that said that around 95% of people who get an answer from a chatbot, they kind of assume that it's true. And I think if you ask a lot of students, that they would agree with that, and they basically, without reading the answer, put it onto tests or in specific articles, as you just mentioned.
Yeah.
How can we, or the world, or society at large, or even the technology companies, start to guide that behavior? Because if we think about it, if you used to go to a library and you kind of borrowed a book and something was written there, then in many cases, well, that's the way that I grew up. We looked for sources, and if it was printed somewhere, then we kind of also assumed that it was true. So what has happened, or what has changed in that regard? I know it's a difficult question.
Yeah, it's a very difficult question. I had this beautiful conversation with my cousin Stavros here in Athens yesterday, and I asked him the question, do you use ChatGPT? He's a student, by the way. He is doing a study in marine engineering. And I asked him the question, do you use ChatGPT? And he said sometimes. When they have tests or when they have to write papers, there is a check here in the programs to see if there is similarity with questions with results from ChatGPT or plagiarism. They have two ways.
Yeah.
In Netherlands, I had a discussion with my last group of students, and we discussed ChatGPT, for example, and if they would use it. And some said, yeah, we use it, but I just use it to form my thoughts. Other people were not very enthusiastic about it. They say it makes me lazy. It makes me not think anymore. It helps me. It doesn't help me to study. So I saw a beautiful conversation in the Netherlands at the university with my students, talking just about large language models and how they use it, or if they use it, and what the risks are, or what they see as a risk. And it was truly an amazing conversation that I had. And I always try to have interactivity in my classes. So we built word clouds with aha slides. To see, because I want to know their thoughts, and then we start, and then I pick one element and I say, okay, let's talk about this element, and then with the open questions, I get beautiful answers, and they started thinking. And I think that's a very good point, that people need to be aware that it helps, but not always. And we need to keep on learning, because it makes our mind lazy.
Right. Well, you're surprising me in a positive way by saying that students are already kind of taking a step back and evaluating critically what it can do, or saying, I'm actually not learning anything from just putting in prompts into a specific part. Do you think that that's going to become more of a trend, that people say, well, it's just another tool, I can use it if I need to, but not more than that?
I think to be honest, we had the discussion. I'm writing an article at this moment because I'm a little bit fighting against the term AI literacy, for example, because at the end, the combining factor is still data. So for me, it's still data literacy. So most likely, I will not use the term AI literacy at all. But now let's get back to the question.
Question was around, so how do we see the younger generation? Are they going to consider this just a tool? Or
I think when you look at the hype cycle, right? We saw the hype cycle, and ChatGPT is at the top at the moment. I think even it's going down a little bit. I think it will go down. It will flatten. And people are past the hype because they found out that things are not true all the time, that critical thinking is starting to take place over, even in our profession in data and analytics. I think it's more, and the cybersecurity area, I think people are more aware of the risks that are involved. I do believe, though, that it will remain, but it will flatten a little bit, and it will help only by the normal things. I think the hype is passing by, to be honest, in my humble opinion.
I think, yeah, no, I agree. So what I see happening here as well is that when it first came out, everyone was talking about it, and it was basically you could not have any conversation where this was not mentioned. But that's kind of fading away, and in my opinion, I think people are going to see it as another productivity tool, just like you have Word or Excel or Tableau or Power BI or any of the other tools that we see. But yeah, the real creative ideas and the critical thinking, as you rightfully mentioned, are not always can always be generated from a chatbot or a language model.
Exactly.
That's
why we need our soft skills so bad.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm going to switch to soft skills in a minute, but just one other question that I would like to do. I was talking also to another educator on this podcast recently, and he said, well, a lot of my students know how to use AI, or in this case, large language models or specific tools. But if you ask any of my students to explain how model is trained or how it works underneath the hood, very few people have an actual understanding of how this content is being created. And that was kind of a question that I found very interesting. So I'd like to ask you that as well. Is if you look at your students in terms of literacy and understanding, do they have a feeling of how the underlying technology works, or is it more of a black box and they just deal with the outcomes?
I think some do and some don't. And it depends on the direction of the study you're in, because the minor that I have at the university is a broad minor, so everybody can sign up. From communication, HR to IT, software engineering, and cybersecurity.
Yeah.
And I think from the cybersecurity and the software engineering part, I think they understand the technology behind it. The other ones, more or less not, or less. I think it varies of the study that you are following and the interests that you have.
Good. No, that's very interesting, and I kind of wanted to learn that from you, because I think you're surrounded by students all the time, and it's just I find it very interesting that people rely a lot on a specific technology without having any kind of deeper understanding around how that works and how it's being trained and how it's being created, or how does it create those kinds of answers. Anyway, it's a good topic and some room for thought. I'd like to switch for a second to the second topic that you just mentioned, and that's kind of the let's refer to it as soft skills. The word that I hear a lot these days is emotional intelligence, in terms of the way that people make decisions, and a critical part of data literacy, as I'm quite sure you're going to advocate for, is also the human side of things and the emotional intelligence that's involved. So how do you see that relationship between emotional intelligence and data-driven decision-making?
Emotional intelligence in our work field, data and analytics, refers to actually the ability to recognize, understand, and manage emotions from both one of ourselves, but also from others, in the process of making decisions, data-driven decisions, or data-informed decisions. So I think from emotional intelligence involves empathy, communication, listening, and the ability to navigate to data related situation with the emotional, the EQ and the IQ combined,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, because ultimately, if you give two people the same data and the same results, even if it's already analyzed, they could still interpret or make different decisions ultimately. And is that the emotional intelligence part of it?
Not quite, but the way you interact with it, with the public
Yeah.
that you are displaying it to, or the stories that you tell, or the questions that you need to ask to the business users, right? We have
Yeah.
to understand what they want. We have to understand what we create, what we tell a story about, and how we interact with others. And that's the soft skill part or the emotional part as well. And I believe that, and there again, Mr. Miyagi's wisdom is to balance it out, find life, find balance, and then move on. It's the same here. If you are too high in your emotional intelligence, it's also not good. It's also less ideal. So we need to use our emotional intelligence, but if we focus on EQ and not the IQ, we won't make a good decision. So it's again Mr. Miyagi's advice: balance it out.
Yeah, and so how do you balance that within a curriculum or within an educational learning path?
Well, as a mentor, as a coach, as a teacher, I always talk about the soft skills that are needed, and I have a complete list. Even friends of mine in my work field around the world, they ask me, "You have materials about the soft skill development, like working together, like organizational sensitiveness," because you have to feel how an organization that you work for as a consultant, you have to feel how they are, what the culture is, how people are interacting with each other. And that, the Dutch word is voelsprieten, but I don't know how to say that in English.
No, I know, I know what you mean there. And the difficult part is that, most people who are within the data science or data domain obviously have a more technical background. I think it's fair to say that people with technical background are typically not the most natural communicators or the most natural emotional intelligence part. So I think balancing that out is a challenge in many of those cases. How can we find a way, and what particular, you just mentioned you had a whole list of soft skills. What are the kind of soft skills that you see or that should be at the top of the list when it comes to things that people would really need to work on?
Well, it's of course working together.
Yeah.
It's communication with the elements of active listening, but also ask questions, dare to ask questions. It's about empathy. It's about the organizational sensitiveness to have your sensors on in how a world acts around you. I think those are the most important ones when it comes to the soft skills area. And from there are more, of course, in the list, but I think those are the ones that are truly important.
And then if you work with groups and in the work that you do you kind of assess that with people, or do you kind of do an assessment or
Well, we can do assessments. They are written down in the book as well. But also you have the conversations, and it's a journey that you can go on. Even I always talk about journeys. I realize that truly, but you can do a journey when it comes to reading visualizations, understanding visualization, and understanding of your profession in data and analytics, and build them as well. On the other side, you can also make a journey in the soft skill area. And I developed a kind of list where you have the soft skill. We have a description about the soft skill, but also the journey is written down and how you can go on that step. And that's how I work with the staff, the people that I mentor and coach. I help them to grow in that maturity. We score it with a 1 to 5, and then you go continue, and then you can follow the progress around in a period of time.
Can imagine. If from your experience, what do people find the hardest soft skill to master?
Active listening.
Active listening.
Communication. I had this cool story. I just closed down my minor, right? It's I'm in the grading period now. I read a lot of stuff from my students, and there is this guy. He's really technical gifted. He's so good in technique, Python. He even managed to build a Python scripts to download external data, put it in ClickSense, using the transactional data, make a beautiful dashboard for me with demographical. I have never seen it before. And at the end, he told me I didn't like the business side of this minor at the beginning. I thought, why do I need to know that? It's technical. And he was so grateful that he told me, by doing this course, this minor, the ability to ask questions and work with the business side of it, I am actually a better programmer now, a better software engineer. And that's the biggest compliment. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I think, quite amazing, because it shows the bridge between that software element of things. Yeah. And that you can translate that as well into more, I would say, technical knowledge and more hard skills, if we want to call it that way.
Yeah.
So again, coming back to Mr. Miyagi, the kind of finding a balance in that.
There we go again.
Yeah,
he was right.
He was absolutely right. That's for sure. Then last key point to mention. So we talked about the emotional part of it. We talked about, obviously, the data literacy side of things, and then the final part of the journey is and I think we mentioned it already very briefly earlier, is moving then towards the part where you convincingly can explain what you did, and many people call that data storytelling. Looking at the way that you communicate your insights, because you can be right, but it's not always means that you're going to get people behind you. So what's your take on the impact of data literacy, data storytelling? Where is it different and where is it similar? I know I always save the best for last.
Yeah. Well, let me refer back to a project that I did. It is one of my most amazing projects I ever did, and it was a project in my role. I just started in the commercial work line because I left UWV because I thought there is more than governmental organizations, and I wanted to learn more. And I started out on a project called Call to Bloom, and Call to Bloom is a project that we worked on, which we wanted to improve the speed in the process of somebody that had a heart issue and the medical treatment.
Okay.
And so people call dispatch, right? Ambulance, transfer, hospital, cut room, and get a stent in the closed veins, the angioplasty, as we say in English. And we had the ability to find 8 steps in that process by working together with 3 organizations. And we had the ability to visualize it by my colleagues in such an amazing way. And when we gave the first demo to the chairman of the Dutch Association of Cardiologists, he was the head of the hospital in Alkmaar. And we had the ability to tell a good narrative, right? Because that's data storytelling, right? And we explained what and how we worked all together on the project, and and it was really a true accomplishment because we had 3 organizations working together. And the moment we told that narrative, based upon a visualization, the process visualization, he jumped out of his chair And he pointed out directly the areas where he saw room for improvement during the process. And when a chairman does that, jumps out, that's truly a moment I will never forget. And I think that's the perfect example of right balance in using EQ and IQ during that project.
Would
So
you
for
say
me,
that basically the picture that you put on the slide, that was the key to explaining what you did?
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And telling the story, showing the story, and because we worked all together, and it's a team effort, right? It's a team effort.
Yeah.
Everybody worked together to make this result. And then at the end, the man that mattered the most, the man that has the mindset actually to help the patients and save their lives, jumped out of his chair and said, here's room, here's room, here's room for improvement.
Wow. Yeah, that's absolutely great.
Yeah.
Good. I see that we are slowly. We've been talking already for a long time, so we're unfortunately almost out of time. I'd like to end with one question, and I ask this question to literally all of my guests, and that is also a question related to the next generation. So if there's people who are listening right now and they are contemplating a career in data and analytics, data science, they might not be living in the Netherlands or unable to sign up for the minor that you are teaching, what would be your final piece of advice to every youngster or person that wants to get a career in data or data literacy?
I think there are many platforms that use programs that you can learn on. Microsoft does it in a different way than Tableau. I personally use the Click platform, the Click Academic Program, because the Click Academic Program has a complete package of free software. They can actually play with the software where AI is embedded, ML is embedded. They can do a lot of things, but also the free e-learnings, the free qualifications, and so on. But I also truly love the platform Udemy or Coursera, but DataCamp is my most favorite because it's a cool and broad platform where you can learn a lot about the various tools that are out there, Gen AI, data governance, and so on. So I think Click Academic Program and the DataCamp platform, that's are the two that I use. But yeah, I think the most important thing is please never stop learning, continuously learn.
Good. I'd like to end that and with that very good piece of advice. Thank you so much, Angelika, for being with us today. I actually learned a lot myself listening to you. I'm going to put on the Karate Kid movie tonight and think about how I can balance the different things together. So thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome, Jan-Willem. Thank you.